We're going to turn now to the poetry. In the same way that the short stories are new, the poems are new. But in exactly the same way that you can take last year's questions and use them as a means to study and prepare, this you can do as well. So let's just have a look at the poetry. So section D is the poetry section, and it says answer on both poems. So you're going to get 2 poems. It tells you to read the poem carefully and answer the questions which follow. Watch the mark allocation. Now, if you look at the poetry question for 6.1.1, instead of having characters, because every other set work has characters and something about what they do or their jobs or something about them, this one has vocabulary. So let's take the grasshopper and the cricket. Let's take a very short poem. So say to yourself, faint, mead, mead's a good one, meadow, mead, short form, meadow, grassy area, a grasshopper, a cricket, luxury. Be careful of weed, just by the way, since I'm talking about this. If you get weed, I know that the modern meaning is a plant that you don't want. But remember, weed is any wild plant. And then as time passed, it said, okay, well, they're wild plants, but then we cultivate plants. We grow them in our gardens. And so weeds are wild plants that we don't want. And so you get the modern meaning of weed. But take the weeds, so I said mead, which would be a meadow, an open grassy thing, faint, weak. What else did we suggest? A cricket, an insect. So this is vocab. So that's how you prepare for this question. So there is likely to be this question as the first question on the first poem in the poetry section is vocabulary. So make sure you know every single word and can explain every single word in context so that you understand that weed being used in what, I don't know, 1825 or whatever it is, doesn't quite mean what we are using in 2023. The word has shifted. So that is the first question, vocabulary, loads of it. Right, identify the figure of speech used in the line, and you know what's coming. Explain why the figure of speech is relevant. So as I said when we were doing the other set works, this is something you might feel was only in poetry. Well, we now are at poetry. So you go to any of your poems. So let's just look at this one, which is You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed, which is the Gabriel O'Cara. And you look through it and you say, okay, I'm looking for a figure of speech. And you say, your laughter was ice block laughter. Okay, so you say, okay, there's a figure of speech. So you choose one for yourself. You come here and you say, I'm going to look at your laughter was ice block laughter. Remember that / means start a new line of poetry. So ice block laughter. What do we have? We have a metaphor. Right, that's my I of IDE. Explain why the figure of speech is relevant in this poem. Why is it effective? So you say, in this metaphor, laughter is described as an ice block, full stop. Now, I would say this suggests that the laughter is cold, that the laughter reflects a frozen heart, that the laughter shows cruel emotions because the person is uncaring. That's why it is. There's my E. This suggests is my E section, why it's effective. So there's my description, and that's why it's effective, and there are my 2 marks. Easy to do in poetry, just look through all your poems. Identify the tone. Identify the tone that the speaker would use in these lines. Once again, take any poem. So let us take our first poem, Hard to Find. What does Sinisipho Jojo say? Says, words are everywhere daily. We read them and they fly out like nobody's business when we're provoked. But there's always something hard to understand. They're hard to find when they're needed by my heart. All right, so everything I choose seems to be frustrated. I don't know if there's a message here. So in the lines where she says, when she needs the words, they are hard to find, she is frustrated. So she'd use a frustrated tone. Why would she use this tone? You would say that she says that words are everywhere. They are, I don't know, everywhere. I can't find my own word for it. Words are everywhere, except when she's trying to express her emotions, and then she simply cannot seem to find the right words. So she is frustrated. Right. State of mind in a particular stanza. Remember, state of mind means a feeling. So once again, you go to any of your poems and say, what is the speaker feeling in that stanza? The speaker, and then substantiate your answer, which is give a reason. So you say the speaker is frustrated or pleased or perplexed or delighted or excited. I want a feeling. I want an emotive word. I want to know the person's emotions. And then I give a reason. So it's 1 mark for the emotion, 1 mark for the reason. And if I say they're excited, I'm explaining why that person is excited at that point. Right, setting. Many poems have settings. So if we're in the grasshopper and the cricket, the setting is summer and the place is outside in the countryside, listening to the sound of the grasshopper. And the second stanza is winter, and this is inside because we're told that there is a stove and we're hearing the cricket sound from the stove. So that's really easy. Remember again, time and place. Go through your poems, look for setting, as if you were dealing with a narrative text. Choose the correct answer. Multiple choice, you need to know your poems really well. Now, I like this as a question. The title of the poem captures the essence of the poem. Discuss your view. So you're going to look at all the titles. So let's say Hard to Find, since we started with the Sinisipho Jojo. The essence of the poem. So this is what you've got to give me. This is a theme as well. The essence, what is she saying, is that to be a poet, she has to find the right words. The right words to convey her meaning, the right words to express her feelings, the right words to influence the reader. So words, language are terribly, terribly important for a poet. But she says that when she tries to write her poetry, she cannot find those words that she needs as a poet to fulfill her role, her personality, her identity as a poet. A poet speaks through language, and she cannot find the right words. So everything that she wants to achieve is frustrated and prevented because she can't find it. So yes, remember, discuss your view. You go, yes, I agree. No, I don't agree, because. And you do that with every single title, reciprocities, and you laughed and laughed and laughed, and what life is really like. You take each title and say? It's a really nice question, and it often comes up, and it's a lovely one to practice with, because you're actually looking at the essence of the poem and seeing why. I mean, obviously quite difficult with a sonnet that's just called sonnet with a number, but you know what I mean. And there will be a second poem. Right. So what have we seen? When you're dealing with poetry, you're dealing with the key features of a literary text. There is often a story. There's often a narrative. We've seen that there is setting and theme or message. That there are characters who have thoughts and feelings, not only the speaker, but characters, other characters in the poem, the speaker especially. There is mood and tone and atmosphere. So all your key features of a literary text you can revise in order to prepare you for the poetry, in the same way that students studying the short stories can go through their key features. So later events in the poem, things that happen, state 2 points which indicate this. So if we're looking for a poem that has a definite story, The Slave Dealer is a definite poem that we can choose. So let's just look at the first stanza. I'll read it to you. From ocean's wave a wanderer came, with visage tanned and dun. Vocab, what does dun mean? His mother, when he told his name, scarce knew her long-lost son. Scarce? What does that mean? Scarcely is what we would have said, but the poet doesn't want scarcely, it messes his rhyme. So altered was his face and frame. Altered, changed. Face, frame, body, by the ill course he had run. Ill, bad, evil. So, in stanza 1, the reader's prepared for later events in the poem. State 2 points which indicate this. Okay, so point number 1, we're told that the wanderer has come home, but he is terribly changed. And so we are being prepared for the changes and for the reasons for those changes. And my second point is we're told he has done ill, he has been evil, he's been wicked, he's been sinful. And we discover that he lashed a slave to death. He's committed murder. So yes, stanza 1 definitely prepares us for later events in the poem. So you see how this question is just so appropriate for at least one of the poems that we're studying. And then we have literal and figurative. I think you need to revise this. So literal, basically, it says what it means. So if I say that his visage, his face, is tanned, we all know what tanning is, and dun. It's a sort of dirty white. So literal, that's what it is. But the figurative meaning, now I don't think that this dun has a figurative meaning, but we could say that it's certainly related to the fact that he actually looks sick. So ill in the sense of sick, because he is ill, because his soul is sick, his mind has been sickened, his memory is sickened because it cannot get rid of the memory of what he's done. So it isn't quite a figurative meaning, but figurative is a second meaning, which is not literal. I know that that's terrible. I'm explaining figurative by saying not literal, but it is a metaphorical meaning. And you need to look for literal and metaphorical meanings. and see if you can find any in your poem. Why does the speaker feel? So take any of the poems, decide what the speaker feels, and then say why. And look at the 2 marks. Remember, always watch the mark allocation. So you're going to explain what and put it in there into the question and say, why does the speaker feel? And you really want to make 2 points. So if we're looking at a poem like Inversnade, so you decide what does the speaker feel about this burn, this stream. He feels awe at its power, and he feels moved by its beauty. Why does he feel that? So you go through the poem looking for reasons for the power of the water, the fact that if we say he feels awe at the water, so let's put that in. Why does the speaker feel awe? Awe is the kind of respect that you feel before God. It's that's what awe is. So why does the speaker feel awe when he looks at the stream? So one point would be the power of the water. He says it's roll rock. It is so strong, it can roll rocks. And then he also feels awe because of the power, the froth that is produced, the spume, the foam. The water is so violently moving down the stream. So why does the speaker feel? Go to your poem, decide on a feeling, and then say, okay, why is this speaker feeling this particular thing at this particular point? Right, once again, a figure of speech, and explain why the figure of speech is relevant. So if we go to, let's stick with Inversnade, and let's look at horseback brown. So you need to do a little bit, again, of the vocab, and maybe a bit of background here, to know that he's looking at water. Now, if you think of clear, clean water, you're thinking of something transparent. You can almost see to the bottom of it. But this water is colored by peat. Now, peat is when the grass grows really kind of thick and matted. People used to cut the peat out in blocks and use it to burn. And in fact, this is why you get very, very bad fires in the very cold areas in the northern hemispheres, because the peat is burning. So it's like matted, it's like tightly packed together. This the roots and everything from the grass. It makes it almost like, as I say, like a thick mat. And because the water is coming from this kind of wet area, the water's actually horseback brown. It's not the white clear that you're thinking of. You're thinking of it's stained dark brown. So horseback brown. So what we have is it a metaphor or simile? Let's go with metaphor at this point. It is a metaphor. It is brown as a horse's back. So in the same way that the hide and the hair of the horse, especially the hair, is brown, so this water is brown as that. But notice it's a kind of rich brown. It's a beautiful brown. It's not an ugly, dirty, polluted brown. So why it's relevant, it's why it's effective in this poem, because he's praising nature. It's a poem about the beauty of nature, which I think we can all sympathize with when we see such pollution. Take any poem, take a figure of speech, discuss it. Why is the following statement false? You would have to find such a statement. Now, irony in the title, this was a very specific poem that they had last year. I think you should look for irony, but maybe not in a title, because every question has, every section, so the drama, the novel, the poetry, every single section has an irony question. So you need to look for irony in one of your poems. So maybe if we want to go back to the slave dealer, possibly, and I know I'm pushing it, but maybe the wanderer, when he set off, expected success, but ironically, he's come back a broken man. Now, that isn't really in the lines of the poem. It's me saying, I don't think he would have gone off hoping to come back as a broken man, but you're looking for irony. You need rather to look for irony that is stronger in the poem itself, but always look for irony. And then we come to themes. You must always look for a theme. So we've talked about nature and the beauty of nature, the unspoiled beauty of nature. So that's one theme. Then discuss it. You need to make your point. You need to have your evidence. You need to have your analysis. And when you're dealing with that theme question, you want to have that all the way through. So you're saying to yourself, this is my theme. I mustn't just tell the story. I must say the water shows the unspoiled beauty. And then I need to find another example which I discuss and another example which I discuss. So it's 3 times over in the theme question. And you can say something like, we see the theme when X happens, and you show me the link. And you need to do that 3 times over for your theme question. So it's point, PEA each time, 3 times over. This whole thing happens there and there and there. And you need to look for your themes in your poetry. And then finally, this poem successfully conveys how the speaker something or other. So you look at your poems, take a poem and say to yourself, how is the speaker feeling? So let's take the Lake Isle of Innisfree. The poem successfully conveys how the speaker longs to leave the city to go to a rural area. Discuss your view. Yes, I agree. No, I don't agree. Okay, if we're taking the Lake Isle of Innisfree, he says, I will arise and go now. So just a little sort of background note. That Yeats was in London at the time and longing to go back to a place in Ireland that he loved. Okay, so just for your interest, but it's not in the poem. So he says right at the end of the poem that he's in the city and we can sense the bustle, the pollution, the noise, the crowds. And he wants to go to this island, and he talks about how peaceful it is. So you can give me an example of the peace, the sounds of the birds, the sense of tranquility with the water and the sounds of the water. And you're discussing your view. So once again, your point, don't just say yes, yes, I agree. You make a point, I agree, that he wants to escape from the noise of the city to the peace of Innisfree, and then give me your evidence and your explanation or your analysis. So you might feel that new poems, you're a little bit unsure, you don't know what you're going to be asked. It's not quite as vague as that, because what you've seen is that the examiners like to ask the same question across all the set works in order to make it fair to everybody. So those of you who are studying something new in the short stories and the poetry, please don't feel abandoned and I'm out there and I don't know what to expect. You go back to the papers that from the last 5 years and say, what kinds of questions are they asking? So no, you won't actually get a past paper to work through in the same way, let's say, that somebody studying My Children, My Africa will get a past paper to work through. But you've got the types of question. And that will just make you think a bit harder and work a bit smarter. So you're not relying on looking at somebody else's memo, but actually looking at the types of questions and saying, okay, I'm going to ask this type of question on my poem and let me see what I can work out. So I don't think it is actually a bad thing. It might be challenging and you might feel a little daunted, but it's actually a very good thing because you will be thinking and studying much more intelligently, much more smartly than you might be if you're just working through past papers and hoping that the same thing will come up. Because it won't be exactly the same thing, the same type of question, yes, but not necessarily the same kind of answer. And you might not see those little tweaks if you are just relying on past papers. But that doesn't mean to say that you mustn't do past papers. Everybody needs to look at the past paper. And the literature paper is an important paper. It's a paper for which you can study, which you can prepare for, and you need to do the studying and the preparation. So I've tried to show you the key techniques. And if you apply those key techniques and you look at your sections, you will find that that will help you when you've done all that work of vocab and meaning and story and figures of speech and all of that kind of thing.